Hi, y'all. Welcome back to Samantha's Beauty Confessions. Today, I am doing another solo episode, and I'm going to be talking about something that I struggled with for many years, and something that I think is very common in the world today, and that is perfectionism. You know, that little feeling that every single thing has to be just right, has to be perfect before we ever get started. And if it's not, then we can't start at all. And if you're anything like me, then you probably have all of these ideas and dreams and goals in your mind, but whenever it comes time to actually putting those things into action, that little, perfectionism creeps in and convinces you that it's not the right time or that you don't have the right details figured out yet and all of the things like that. And anyways, I just wanted to talk about this a little bit, to talk about the struggles that we all face with perfectionism and different ways that we can start breaking out of like the hold of it, of its control, I guess. So on today's episode, I'll be sharing some of my own personal experiences and the different tips that helped me kind of get out of my own head a little bit and start taking action, because the truth is, we all know that there's no such thing as perfect. And if we sit around and wait for everything to be perfect, then we're quite literally going to be waiting forever. So let's go ahead and get into it. Welcome to Samantha's Beauty Confessions, where we engage in authentic conversations and confess everything it takes to turn our dreams into a reality. Together, we'll unlock your unique beauty and guide you toward living the life of your dreams. Get ready to go beyond the highlight reel. Embrace the journey and grow together, one conversation at a time. So, as I was planning out today's episode, I was trying to figure out when this constant need of perfection started for me. And to tell you the truth, I really don't remember a time in my life when I wasn't this way. Like, from a very young age, I wanted, my handwriting to be perfect at school. I wanted the projects that I would do in my classes to be perfect. My Halloween costumes, I wanted those to be perfect. I wanted, to say the perfect thing, to do the perfect thing. It's always been there for me. And obviously, I know that there's no such thing as perfect. I'm doing this in air quotes, but basically, I just had this mentality that if I was going to do something, I wanted to get it as close to that as I possibly could, or else what was the point, Like, why would I do something if it wasn't going to be great? And for the longest time, I really didn't see anything wrong with this, Like, I thought it was just a normal way of thinking. But through therapy, I've realized that perfectionism is actually a defense mechanism. Being a perfectionist stems from a fear of failure or of criticism or shame. And basically, it convinces us that if we can't be this, if we can't do this perfectly, then we just need to avoid it at all costs. And it wasn't until I went through my divorce that I was able to finally see the benefit of releasing this constant need of perfection. And when I started thinking about why this was, I think it's because a divorce it's a public thing, right? Like, I don't know if this is normal everywhere, but when I got a divorce, it came out in the newspaper, and I live in a small town. And so, it was just a matter of time, a very short amount of time, that people started to find out that I had just experienced the ultimate failure. I was getting a divorce, and I couldn't hide behind the facade of perfectionism anymore. People were going to realize that my marriage hadn't been perfect, and, that I wasn't perfect. Surprise, surprise. And once this happened, it just kind of, released me in a way, I guess. It was something that obviously was very difficult and something that I wouldn't wish on anybody, truly. But for as hard as it was, I'm really thankful for it, because it allowed me to finally just be me, like the person that I was underneath all of society's expectations, this person that had always been there, but was kind of hidden a little bit, from pressure or, whether it be external pressure or internal pressure, whatever. I can't really explain that feeling, but all I know to say is that it felt super freeing when I finally got there. Obviously, I wish, again, that it didn't have to be, this traumatic experience to get me there. I wish I would have realized it in a much easier way, but I didn't. And don't get me wrong, like I still have days where perfectionism tries to creep in, but luckily at this point in my life, I have done enough healing to at least recognize it before it completely takes over. Because what happens when it starts to take over is we stay stuck. Like perfectionism makes us believe that we need to stay where we are because that is where it's safe. That if we step outside of that little safety net, it's going to lead us to the feelings we don't want to experience, like rejection and criticism and failure. And so we just kind of sit there and we just kind of live life as we've been living, and we don't go after our dreams and our goals, and we don't chase the ideas that we have in our mind. And this is exactly the exact thing that stopped me from starting my Instagram page 5-6 years ago. When I did, I had this idea that was on my mind for years and years, y'all, like years. And I would just convince myself over and over with these excuses, like, I don't know how to get started, or I don't have time to get started, or there's already so many people on Instagram, so why would anybody care what I have to say? Or, I'll start whenever I can afford to buy the equipment, or whatever the case may be. And for years, I just allowed these negative thoughts to continue to bury my goal and my dreams deeper and deeper inside of me and kind of push it to the side. And all that was doing was hurting me, because deep down, I knew that I had something to share, And I know I'm not alone in this, right? Like, this is such a common struggle that we all face. And I'm assuming that there are a lot of you listening right now who also have this idea or this dream or this goal in your mind. You have these things that you constantly want to do, but you allow that perfectionism mentality to keep you stuck. You allow it to turn into fear and to just like keep you frozen in time where you're at, and you never actually go after it. And so I wanted to share a couple of things that have helped me really like overcome this, or at least, I don't know if I want to say overcome, because I do still struggle with perfectionism again from time to time, but just helped me see it in a different way and helped me still be able to take action before it's perfect. Okay. So hopefully the things I'm about to share with you will help you along your journey and allow you to go after whatever it is that you are wanting to achieve. And the first thing is just knowing that you don't have to have it all figured out. The key is actually not perfection. It is to take imperfect action. There is not a single person in this world that is successful who would tell you that they became successful overnight. But I know just as well as you do that in the world of social media, we tend to see people, especially, the successful ones, as if they've always just been that. We think that these people that we look up to or whatever, we think that they were just born like that, born successful, that they didn't have to put in any of the hard work. They didn't have to overcome any of these fears. And I think a lot of the reason that this tends to be the case is because we're looking at people through the lens of social media. And it's easy to assume that when you're doing it that way, It's easy to look at their highlight reel and, the version of them that they are right now in this moment and forget that they also had to start from somewhere too. And honestly, just like reminding yourself of this all the time, anytime you find yourself going down that little rabbit hole of comparison, remember that you are comparing your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 100. And I can almost guarantee you that if you scrolled all the way down on their Instagram feed, or if you, researched them on Google and you read a little bit more about their story or whatever, that you would see that they too faced the same struggles in the beginning that you are right now. And I think that once you just kind of know this and believe this and prove this to yourself, that you're going to feel this instant weight lifted off your shoulders. Now, I kind of went off on a little tangent there, but I couldn't help myself because I felt like that was important. But anyways, back to my point, in order to get started with imperfect action, I recommend sitting down with your idea or your goal and thinking about what the very first step would be to move forward closer to that. don't sit down and think about, your idea or your goal as like this whole picture thing, because I know for me that this is when I start to feel really overwhelmed, because it just seems so much, there's so many moving parts and so many steps, and it just feels like you're never going to be able to accomplish all of that. And then we end up putting the idea kind of like back in our pockets, pushing it down and never taking action, which is what we want to avoid. But if you simply just figure out what that first step is, you'll be able to take that step on one day, and then the next day you can take another step, and then before you know it, you'll finally be at your goal. And remember, like, the details aren't important. Taking the first step is what's important, because most of the time, the little details and all of the things that you think you need to do to get there aren't actually how it's going to play out anyways. So there's really no need to stress about it. And I know it's so much easier said than done, because I myself used to obsess over the logistics of creating content. I thought that I had to have this fancy camera and, all of these like studio lights, and spend all of this money on expensive equipment that now is all just sitting on a shelf collecting dust in my guest bedroom closet. Today, I am literally using my cell phone and a $20 tripod on Amazon to create every single photo and video that you see on my page. Like, I don't use any of the stuff that I spent years and years researching and saving up money to buy, and all of the things. All of that was so unnecessary. And if I could go back in time and save myself all of that stress, I 100% would. Because, again, all you have to do is take the first step, and you'll figure out the rest as you go. Another thing that really helped me was to start reframing my fears and almost like accept them as reality, like they'd already happened. Because a lot of times our need to be perfect comes from a fear that, it's going to be different for everybody, right? It could be a fear of what people are going to say, or again, of criticism or judgment or of failure, whatever it is for you. But just expect that there's going to be a time in your journey where this is going to happen. And if you just kind of play it out in your head, if you visualize it and you already, accept that it is, it's going to help it sting so much less when and if it does come up down the road. So for me, one of my biggest fears was the fear of judgment. And, I'm from a small town, and I was really worried when I first started trying to build my Instagram page that people were going to talk about me behind my back. They were going to make fun of me. They were going to wonder what the heck I was doing and, think I was crazy for thinking I could do something like that. And I let that hold me back for so long, because I don't know, nobody wants to be talked about, right? Not negatively anyway. And this was something that through therapy I've realized goes back to my childhood, like everything. But I finally just expected it to happen and just accepted that the people who are going to talk about me behind my back, like, their opinion shouldn't hold me from chasing my dreams. It shouldn't keep me stuck in the position I'm in just because I'm worried about what they're going to think, Another thing that held me back was I thought that if I got negative comments on any of my posts, that was just going to absolutely crush me. And that's another thing that you just kind of have to expect, because if you put yourself out there on social media, you're going to have a day where somebody leaves you at least one negative comment. But you know what? Negative comments count as engagement too. And what I tell myself today is anytime that I see somebody leave something hateful on a post, that is helping my engagement. And engagement is going to tell the algorithm that people are interested in my content, and it's going to allow the algorithm to push it out there into the explore feed, which ultimately helps me get closer to, where I'm wanting to be. And so just tell yourself that the people who are leaving those negative comments, that they are not brave enough to go after their dreams, so much so that they are having to try to crush yours to make themselves feel better. And whenever you think of it like that and reframe it that way, it helps a lot. It takes that sting away from what the comment actually said. So just sit down and figure out what those fears are for you, because again, they're going to be different for everybody, and visualize them as a reality. And once you accept them as reality, you're going to feel so much better to just go for it, regardless of what that fear is telling you. And the last thing that I want to leave you with is to give yourself grace throughout this process. If you try something and it doesn't work, be kind to yourself and know that that's okay. It's normal, right? Like, just because you try something and it didn't work out as planned doesn't mean that you failed. It just means that you need to kind of readjust and try again a different way. And it goes back to what we talked about earlier, but every single successful person that you see has been through this process. Like, they have been through these quote unquote failures that aren't really failures, but they feel like it in the moment. But just remember that there's no right or wrong way to do things. And you can read all of these articles and take all of this advice from people who have done the thing that you're wanting to do. But you may find a better way to do it, or an easier way to do it, or some way to do it that works better for your life and your situation. And that is totally okay. That is normal. Like, every single person's going to do things a little bit different, and that is what makes the world a beautiful place, And as you're learning what works best for you, it's only natural to fall down a couple of times before you get to the end. But don't focus so much on, how many times that you fell. Just stay focused and make sure that every time you fall, that you're giving yourself the grace and the permission to get back up and try again, because that is what matters. And I want to leave you with knowing that we are our own biggest critic, that we spend so much time and energy obsessing over things that really nobody else is ever going to notice unless we point them out, And we can't allow our need for perfection, or, our perfectionistic tendencies, I guess, to keep us stuck and never allow us to actually chase our dreams. Because believe me, like, as scary as it is to put yourself out there and be vulnerable, I promise you that it's even scarier to get to the end of your life and have to look back and wonder what would have happened if you would have just done it, if you would have just got started. Okay, and I think that is where I want to end it. I know that today's episode was kind of like a motivational speech, or like a little TED Talk, I guess, but this is just something that I see and I hear about all the time, whether I'm at, hair shows or talking to clients or whatever. Every single person, has struggled with this at one point or another. I hate to always, say everybody, but I really do think perfectionism is something that everyone can relate to at one point or another in their lives. And I thought it was really important just to give my perspective on it, in hopes that, hearing somebody who has struggled with it and has been able to kind of push through it a little bit, and is still a work in progress, of course. I'm hoping that this will give you the courage to do the same, and to chase your dreams, and to know that you're valuable and that you're worthy of getting to where you want to be in life, and that, you don't have to stay in the place you are right now just because it's safe. I promise you that once you get started, once you put one foot in front of the other and take that first step, that you're going to be shocked at how easy it is to actually get there. It just is so hard at first to get over that mental block, over that hurdle, and do it. But it will be so worth it in the end. So, as always, thank you for listening, and I will talk to you again next Monday. Okay, y'all, that's it for today's episode. Be sure to follow the show on whatever platform you're listening, and leave a rating and review to show your support so we can continue growing together. If today's episode really resonated with you, you can always share it to your story, and be sure to tag me so I can personally thank you. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I'll talk to you again next week.